Hello everyone. Before we begin, if you can all please confirm that you can hear me and see the slides clearly by just typing yes in the chat window. Also, please feel free to introduce yourself, your name, position, company, and which country you're based in. It's great to see an international audience of people from all industries and backgrounds. It's nice to meet you all. Okay, great. Thanks for the confirmation. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for registering and taking time out on a Saturday to learn about Introduction to Environmental Impact Assessment, which itself shows that you're all high achievers and interested in expanding your technical knowledge. We hope by the end of this webinar, you will have gained good knowledge about the EIA. So, as some of you may already know, this is our 26th webinar in a series of technical webinars we are conducting. So, please follow us on LinkedIn and make sure to check our website to stay tuned to the latest updates as we'll be conducting more webinars in the coming weeks. So, my name is Mohammed Jafar, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Velosi. We have quite an experienced panel of speakers here for you today. I'm with my colleagues Mr. Ijaz, Mr. Tony, Ms. Gayatri, and Mr. Faizad, who are experts in this field with a collective experience of over 50 years. So, you're all in good hands today. During this webinar, we encourage you all to keep asking questions to clear any doubts. This can not only help you, but also many others who usually have the same doubts. You can type your queries in the Q&A window, and you'll either receive a reply in the window, or we'll answer it live if we feel it's something important, and that will benefit everyone. So we'll try to answer questions at the end of each section. Please make sure to ask your queries in the Q&A window and not the chat window. We'll have a detailed Q&A session after the completion of the topic. Please accept our apologies if your question is not addressed due to the high volume of questions usually received. We'll also be issuing participation certificate to all those who have attended at least 80% of the webinar and have participated in the discussions throughout the Q&A. Since this is quite a technical subject, and today we'll be touching key theoretical and practical aspects of environmental impact assessment in this limited time of 2 hours, we request you all to follow along and with us and keep asking questions to help us in making this as engaging as possible. So today's webinar is based on a case study that we have conducted previously. Please note that the client's name and data have been redacted. We'll be following a practical approach where we'll walk you through the key steps through the case study. The main goal is that by the end of this webinar, you'll have a good understanding of the relevant codes, standards, methodology, significance, and practicality of environmental impact assessment. Before we begin, although most of us are in the comfort of our home, we should be aware of the emergency exists. Due to the current COVID-19 situation, we should keep a safe distance and in general, take care of ourselves and those around us. So let me start by giving you a brief introduction of Velosi and what we do. Velosi is a leading global consulting firm that provides asset integrity management, HSE, engineering, environmental, and software solutions to the clients in the oil and gas, energy, power, and petrochemical industries around the world. We also have our in-house proprietary software, Whale Plant, which is an industry-leading SAP-certified complete asset integrity management software, currently used by the oil and gas giants such as ADNOC, Dragon Oil, Tanap, and many more to the list. Now, founded in 1982, we have expanded our footprint to more than 38 countries worldwide, offering a full range of specialized consultancy services tailored to the energy industry needs. Here is a map showing our worldwide existence. By combining global coverage and local knowledge with a wide range of services, we are able to create tailored solutions to complex problems. A range of interrelated services and integrated approach ensures that we can accommodate a wide range of projects. Now, we provide services covering a broad range of industries like oil refineries, GOSPs, gas and NGL plants, chemical plants, fertilizer plants, pipelines, offshore platforms, wellheads, and structures. Now, let me give you a brief of the services that we provide. Now, under the asset integrity management services, we provide risk-based inspection, pipeline integrity management system for onshore and offshore, structural integrity management system, pressurized equipment management system, inspection scheduling management system, wellhead integrity management system, asset performance management system, computerized maintenance management system, ISO 55001, which is asset management system, safety integrity level, reliability centered maintenance, reliability, availability, and maintainability, NDT testing convention and advanced both, condition based monitoring, technical trainings, DCVG, and CIP service. Now we have the health, safety, and environmental services under which we provide the full HSEI studies, then process safety and risk studies under which we do workshop facilitation, risk assessment, COMA safety cases, HSECES, which is health, safety, environmental critical equipment system, drilling HSE consultancy services, and we also provide environmental studies like environmental impact assessment, environmental management plans, environmental compliance audits, environmental modeling and assessments, environmental monitoring and testing. We are also approved by EAD, which is Environmental Agency Abu Dhabi, and Dubai Municipality and EHS Truckies in Dubai to carry out various environmental services. We also provide occupational health risk assessment, under which comes emergency management and planning, qualitative OHRA, quantitative ORA, workplace exposure monitoring, industrial hygiene monitoring plan. Then we provide engineering services under which we do conceptual design feed, detailed design, and engineering consultancy services. We develop operation manuals and procedures. We do design verification and appraisal, fitness for service, and as-built drafting services. Under the software solutions, we have the Whale Plant, which is a complete asset integrity management system. Then we have the Whale PHA, which is for process hazard analysis, which is used for doing hazard and spill studies. And we have the Whale PSRA, which is specific to petrol station risk assessment. We have the Whale MTS, which is for material tracking system. We have the Whale ERP, Whale CTR, Whale Flow, and Whale certificates. Now, we provide various audits and assessment as well, under which comes the OSHA safety audits, technical audits, environmental audits, process safety management audits, structural audits, firefighting system adequacy audits, regulatory compliance audits, flammable storage facility audits, electrical audits. We also provide ISO consultancy and training for leading standards of ISO, like ISO 9001 for quality management system, ISO 14001, which is for environmental management system, and ISO 45001 for occupational health and safety management system, and the various major standards available in the market. Now, these are the various equipments that we use for carrying out various inspection services. Now, Velosi has successfully executed 600 projects with 300 plus clients, including ADNOC, Dragon Oil, Saudi Aramco, Tanap, Sonatrach, Dolphin Energy, OSIP, Repsol, BP, and many more to the list. Now, here are some of the certifications, accreditations, approvals, and memberships held by Velosi. Now, I request Mr. Faizan to continue with today's presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jafar, for presenting Velosi and the services that we're offering. And thank you so much, participants, for your registering for today's webinar, which is the environmental impact assessment. In today's webinar, we will explain you and we will present what is the environmental impact assessment and what is the practical approach to carry out the environmental impact assessment, and we will present you the case study as well. So first of all, we will start with the definition. What is environmental impact assessment? Basically, environmental impact assessment is a step or the systematic procedure, and in which we identify the environmental impacts and we assess them, and we also just determine the mitigation and the monitoring practices as well. Basically, it is a procedure in which we have to identify what are the environmental impacts associated with the activities, what are the environmental impacts associated with the projects or the process, and accordingly we have to assess them. Either is it a low medium, either it's a low, either it's a medium, either it's a high. So we have to assess the impacts as well, so that accordingly we can propose some mitigation measures and accordingly monitoring practices. And then there are some scenarios, there are some cases where EIA is required, and there are some scenarios where EIA is not required. So in this one, we will explain when EIA is required. The EIA process shall start at the earliest possible stage of a project to verify. Basically, in every country, there is a particularly rule that before the commencement of the project, the environmental impact assessment should be carried out to get the environmental clearance, to get the NOCs, to get the approval from the regulatory authority that this project is not having a negative or the high environmental impacts on the environment. So basically, it should be carried out at the earliest possible stage so that the mitigation measures can be proposed, or if required, the design control can be put in the project as well. Basically, the EIA process shall start at the earliest possible stage of the project to verify the environmental feasibility of the project. Either is it a feasible for the environment, either it having a negative impact, either it's having a low or either medium, so that we can just propose mitigation measures, and accordingly we can propose some monitoring programs as well. And in order to identify the important environmental aspects for further consideration in the following phases of the project. As I explained that it should be started at the earliest stage of the project. For example, we should start at the concept stage, then feed, detail engineering, construction, uh, operation, decommissioning, and combined phase. And in every stage, there are the particular requirements as well to just conduct some workshops, to conduct some environmental impact assessment reports, and accordingly, in the subsequent phases, we have to update or we have to develop some management plans as well. We will explain to you the annual workshops and the practical approach as well in our later slides. Uh, then, as I explained before as well, that when EIA is not required, as I explained that there are some scenarios then where the EIA is not required. For example, when no change in the quantity or the quality of existing discharges to the environment during the operational phase. When we feel that, when we assess that there is no discharge, or either it's a quality wise or the quantity wise, then EIA will not be required. The second scenario, that will be no requirement for new structures or infrastructure, including additional camp facilities, utilities, access road, etc. If this is the scenario, then EIA will not be required. No existing or the future land use conflict with the proposed project. If it is, there will be no conflict between for the future land use, then EIA will not be the required. So there are basically the three scenarios where normally EIA is not required. The first one is when the quantity or the quality of existing discharge is not changed. Then no requirement for the new structures or infrastructure, including additional camp facilities. And then if there is no future land use conflict, then EIA is not required. But there are some special cases where EIA is mandatory. For example, if artificial island and the facilities being developed on such islands will require an EIA assessment. We have to carry out environmental impact assessment in detail for such kind of a projects. Then existing facility. EIA will be reviewed as a part of HSE integrity assurance audit, including environmental monitoring requirements, performance of emission control equipment, and effluent standards. We have, if there is any existing facility, then we have to carry out environmental impact assessment as well if they are going for any modification as well. Then the brownfield and modification projects, where an existing facility is planned to undergo substantial changes or expansion. If we assess that there is any quality or the quantitative discharge which can be changed, then we have to carry out environmental impact assessment as well for the brownfield or the modification projects. So far, and then there is another phase, that is a combined phase. There are some projects which require the combined phase. For example, seismic surveys, drilling well, testing, infrastructure projects, in which we have to cover life cycle of the project, and then in this phase we have to develop the environmental impact assessment as well. Then decommissioning and demolition. If the facility or the infrastructure is going for the decommissioning or demolition, then we have to assess environmental, and we have to carry out the environmental impact assessment to assess the environmental impacts on the environment due to the projects. So what are the objectives basically to carry out environmental impact assessment? Basically to provide a comprehensive description of the environment baseline conditions. Basically the first objective that we have to assess what are the current baseline conditions, what are the quality of the air, what are the quality and what are the levels of the noise, whatever, what are the level, what are the quality of the soil, what is the quality of the groundwater, what is the condition of the socio-economic and the other aspects as well. So we have to provide a comprehensive description of the environment baseline condition. Then accordingly we have to identify the probable impacts of the proposed project. Then the next objective is to just identify what are the environmental impacts that are related to that proposed project. We have to identify, and on the basis of the environmental impacts of the project on the environment, we have to identify the mitigation measures, how we can control, how we can mitigate this environmental impacts. We have to identify, and accordingly we have to monitor as well, and we can propose some monitoring efforts as well on monitoring programs. The next section is the legal framework and the applicable standards. Every country is having their own standards, but the minimum standard, that is before commencement of the project, we have to carry out environmental impact assessment. We have to get environmental NOC from the regulatory authority. We have to get environmental clearance. Every country having their different names, but the main theme is that the project cannot commence until the proponent is having NOC from the regulatory authority. The United Arab Emirates is a federation that has a provisional constitution which provides the legal framework. The federal government promulgates legislation concerned and regulates the principal and central aspects of the federation to control issues related to the HSC. There are some national level laws, and sometimes it is basically the requirement of the company as well. Client specific standards is also there, national environmental laws and regulation, federal laws and ministerial decrees. Then there are some international convention and the protocol that we need to follow, and then the regional convention and the protocol and ISO 14000 family environmental management. So these are basically the legal framework. As I told you that every country having their own standard, but the theme or the main soul of this is that every proposed project should have the NOC before commencement. Either it's a design stage or any stage of the project, the proponent must get the NOC from the regulatory authority. Then now I will explain you about the EIA process and the components. The EIA process and the key element of the process are: first we have to carry out the screening, then scoping, establishing the baseline, assessment of impacts, establishing the mitigation commitments, and then accordingly developing environmental management and monitoring plans. Then what is screening? This is basically the flow chart. First we have to carry out the screening study, then scoping, then environmental impact assessment, then accordingly predict the environmental impacts, then evaluate either it's a low, either it's a medium, either it's a high. So we have to just evaluate the impacts as well, their significance on the environment. Then on the basis of the significance of the environmental impact, we have to we have to propose some mitigation measures, and accordingly we have to monitor those mitigation measures as well. So now I will explain what is the screening. Basically the screening is the process of deciding whether or not a project is likely to have a significant environmental impacts, or whether EIA is required or not. Basically it is a first step where we have to determine on the basis of available data, on the basis of experience, on the basis of the workshop, either this project is having any significant environmental impact on the environment. If it is having significant environmental impact, then EIA is required. But at the screening stage, if we came to know that no, this project is not having significant environmental impact, then EIA is not required. So this is the stage where we will determine either EIA is required or not. And screening study involved conducting a preliminary review of the project, identifying the sensitivities of the site and surrounding land uses, considering the environmental releases to air, water, and land, and making a judgment on whether or not any significant impacts are likely to arise. Then the next step is the scoping study, preliminary scoping study. Scoping is the process of identifying, confirming key issues that warrant additional assessment within the subsequent phase of the EIA process. Scoping requires an evaluation of the project and a review of the potential environmental and social impacts and their significance, and appraisal of the most appropriate techniques for impact prediction. Then this was only the preliminary scoping report, and then there will be the final scoping report that will be carried out on the basis of the checklist, that is based on the risk matrices, professional judgment, and the brainstorming, and then Enid. For these all Enid workshop we will explain in our later slides, but these are on the basis of these four we have to just compile the final scoping report, and this final scoping report will also determine that what we have to consider in the main environmental impact assessment report. Sometimes in other regions, in other countries, we call it as a term of references as well, TORs. So it varies from country to country. In some countries we call it as a scoping report, and in some countries we call it as a term of references, which is basically a binding, or we have to just fix the scope of work that we have to cover in the environmental impact assessment. Checklist and the matrices provide a relatively simple method for identifying potential significant impacts, but are not able to capture more complex issues, including interactions. Then the next one is the professional judgment and the brainstorming. On the basis of basically experience and on the basis of the judgment, we can just mention what we have to consider in the environmental impact assessment, or either this project is having significant environmental impact or not. Then the next is the Enid workshop. Basically, Enid workshop or Enid exercise involve assembling a team of professionals. Basically, in this workshop, we call it as the Enid workshop, in which we have to assemble a team of the professional. The team of the professional, it can be from a design engineer, operation, HSE engineers, environmentalists, and other discipline that are involved in that particular project, and we have to discuss each aspect of the project as well. The team is chaired by an experienced environmental specialist. It is recommended that the independent experienced chairman women are used, and they work through a prepared list of the project activities and environmental aspects, and identify which of the aspect is likely to have a significant impact. On the basis of basically a team discussion, on the basis of our judgment, and on the basis of the professional discussion, then we came to know that either this project is having a significant environmental impact or not. The process is comprehensive and provide a suitable and audit trail for decision on the scoping. So basically, now you can see a template. This is the Enid workshop worksheet template, where you can see that there are the activity. We have to mention what are the activities that can impact on the environment, then aspects as well. And on the basis of aspects and activity, we can identify the impacts and their consequences. And then we have to check either is it a legal requirement or not. For example, is there any community concern or the reputational risk? Then on the basis of environmental impact, we have to just mention preventive and the control measures, and accordingly the monitoring measures as well that are in place, or that will be in place. And after all these things, then we have to signify the environmental impact as well, the severity, the duration, and accordingly the risk as well. And if there will be any requirement for recommendation as well, for example, if I talk about the first one, vehicular movement, the aspect can be at the dust and the engine exhaust emission. The impact can be the air pollution and increased particulate matter in the ambient air. The consequences can be a deterioration of the ambient air quality, and there will be definitely the community concern if it increases in a high concentration. Then we have to mention some preventive and the control measures, for example, vehicle maintenance, then the training, testing, paved roads to avoid generation of the dust, and then monitoring measures, engine testing. Then we have to identify the severity as well. Either it's a 4, there is a particular matrix that we normally use to identify the severity and the duration and accordingly the risk as well. And after all this thing, if we want to add any recommendation, we can add recommendation as well in the last column so that the company or the project proponent can implement during the project. So this is the final scoping report that is based on the matrices, Enid report, judgment, brainstorming. So the final scoping report should be a document which contain the following minimum information, that is the outline, description of the proposed project, then existing baseline features, review of likely environmental issues and the significant impacts. Then accordingly, what we have to include in the EIA as well, we have to mention, and the identification of all those environmental issues which have been scoped out of the assessment. In the final scoping report, we have to mention what we have to include in the EIA report and what we have to scope out from the assessment. We have to mention with the justification, and then the brief statement on the proposed methodology for the study as well. Environmental baseline. In environmental baseline, it is one of the key component of the EIA process, in which we have to assess the current conditions of the project or the surrounding area, surrounding environment. The EIA should include a detailed evaluation of the baseline environmental condition at the project site and its surrounding, including areas outside the project site boundary where impacts could arise during any phase of the project life cycle. Basically, in the baseline condition, normally what we have to assess, that is the ambient air quality, noise level monitoring, the condition of the soil, the condition of the groundwater, the condition of the socio-economic. So these are the main baseline condition that we have to assess and we have to mention with respect to the project. Collecting the environmental baseline data at the early stages of the project will ensure that the information is available in the time for the formal, more detailed EIA required as part of the HSEIA process. Then the next component, that is the impact assessment and the significance. As I explained in the Enid worksheet, that once we have to assess the activity and the aspects, then we have to just identify the impacts as well. And their significance. There is no usually exact significance model, but different approaches are used, and it is basically different approaches we can use, and it is vary from country to country. There are the different matrices that we can use for to identify the significance of the environmental impact. 4 types of environmental risks need to be considered. One of impacts associated with activities such as civil engineering, commissioning, and abandonment. Routine impacts associated with the planned normal or abnormal operating conditions. For example, the planned one is the operation of the generators. It is a plan. But if there is any leakages, spill, this is the abnormal operating condition. Then non-routine impacts such as those arising from process trips, emergency startups, shutdowns, fire, explosion, and then historical impacts due to the past activities. So what is the planned environmental impact? Normally we have to consider 2 kinds of the environmental impacts. One is the planned environmental impacts, and second one is accidental environmental impacts as well. The planned environmental are those that are natural consequences: building projects, building roads, pipelines, site clearing, preparation. All these are the planned environmental impacts. Operating facilities, for example, emission to the atmosphere through combustion of or venting, effluent to surface, land and marine environment, effluent to ground. Basically, the planned environmental impacts are impacts through the normal or the planned activity. Then the accidental environmental impacts. Accidental environmental impacts can occur as a result of mishap or failure. Failure of material or equipment. It can be the procedure not being followed, unforeseen, non-routine process, upset process, equipment process not performing as per design. Basically, the plan and accidental or unplanned are those which are just because of any accident or mishap or the failure. Typical types or example of accidental that may lead to environmental impact include but are not limited to the spill, leaks, fire, explosion, process blowdowns, emergency flaring, etc. Then after identify the environmental impacts, either it's a planned or unplanned, then we have to just mention significance of environmental impact as well. Either it's a low, either it's a medium, either it's a high. So we have to just identify the significance of the environmental impact as well. The significance of a planned and accidental environmental impact depends on a number of factors, which include but not limited to the impact magnitude, the severity, the impact duration, the reversibility, the impact interaction and cumulative effects, whether the impact is positive, beneficial, or the negative, direct or indirect, then the sensitivity of the receiving environment as well. The sensitivity of the receiving environment is a key factor in deciding impact significance as well. And the next is the risk ranking, as we mentioned before slides, that after impact identification, we have to identify the significance of environmental impact as meant. The methodology to determine impact severity is different for planned and unplanned. Basically, there are the different matrices that we use for planned and different matrix for unplanned accidental impact as well. Planned environmental impacts refer to all impact that arise during normal activities. This is the thing which we explained, where there is an element of reasonable predictability that an impact will occur. Such activities encompass routine maintenance activities, shutdown, startups, routine flaring. By using the matrix to determine impact severity, it should be noted that the impact severity matrix assume that event is occurring or is going to occur. So basically, the impact duration is equivalent to the duration of the impact and the recovery time. Now I will show you the basically the environmental severity risk matrix that we normally use for the planned environmental impact. Here you can see that the left, it's a 6 by 6, and you can see that there is a left column that is determine the severity of the environment impact, that is a starting from the slight, moderate, notable, minor, moderate, massive, and disastrous. And then there is a likelihood as well, that is a momentary, that basically shows the duration of the impact. Momentary, short term, medium term, long term from 10 to 30 years, and then the long term, which is more than 30 years. So on that basis, we can say that the environmental impact is significant. Then either it's a low, then we can manage through HSEMS or environmental management system. So I will give you one example. From CAT 2, CAT 1 and CAT 2, all these are the significant environmental impact. And other than CAT 3 and CAT 4, these are not a significant environmental impact, and we can manage these environmental impact through company HSEMS or environmental management system as well. Then the major accidental environmental impacts. Accidental environmental impacts are those caused by accident releases. We explained before as well that release that has the potential to lead to the disastrous, catastrophic, major or serious consequences to the environment. And here I want to just mention that we normally use another matrix for unplanned or the accidental environmental impacts. Here we use different matrix. We call it environmental impact severity matrix. But to determine the significance of accidental environmental impacts, we use another matrix we call is a risk matrix. It is also the 6 by 6 matrix. For unplanned or accidental environmental impacts, we use risk matrix to determine the significance of unplanned or accidental environmental impacts. Before that, before going into the detail, if you have any questions so that we can answer those questions.
Yes, yeah. You received quite a few questions through our Q&A chat section. So yeah, we start with the first one. If a similar platform is constructed nearby an existing platform, then EIA is required or not?
Basically, as we mentioned that if it's the existing facility and if there is any additional structure is going to develop, then the screening will determine either is there no discharge to the environment, if there is no changes in the physical environment or the biological environment, then EIA is not required. But if that additional platform is releasing some discharges to the environment, then definitely environmental impact assessment will be required.
Will EIA be required if environmental baseline audit is altered?
Yes, definitely. EIA is required if the project is proposed some alteration in the baseline conditions, then environmental impact assessment will be required.
Is EIA process used for education sector?
Education sector mean, for example, if there is a development of the university, the school, then depending upon the nature of the and nature and the location of the sector, then EIA will be required. But yes, if I talk about any other perspective in education sector, normally it is also the part of the study education as well for to study the environmental impact assessment.
Is it necessary to involve a government environmental official for the EIA study?
Yes, definitely. EIA, or as I mentioned in the introduction, that before commencement of the project, environmental impact assessment is required to get NOC from the regulatory authority. So, without involving government authority, we cannot get environmental clearance, NOC from the regulatory authority. So, we have to involve government officials in the EIA stage so that we can get environmental impact assessment. In some countries, there is another component, that is a public consultation as well. And in public consultation, we have to consult public, and even in some countries, there is a public hearing as well, even after submission of the environmental impact assessment to the authority. And if it is a significant environmental impact and there is a concern from the community, then we have to arrange a public hearing in which the government officials will be available, and then we have to hear from the community around the project so that we can resolve their concern.
What is the difference between EIA and HSEIA assessment?
Basically, EIA and this assessment, these are the different names in different regions. For example, normally in every country we call it as an environmental impact assessment, but sometime if the project is of international funded, then we have to cover some safety perspective, then we have to cover social part as well. So these are the name of the assessment with respect to the different requirements of the project, if it's international funded or if it's the some regions we call it EIA and some we call it ESIA as well. So it depends on the region as well, but the main thing is that is to know that either this project is having environmental impact on the environment or not.
Kindly tell how it is related to ISO standard. EIA is related to ISO standard.
It's not as such directly related to the ISO standard. We mention it environmental management system because if a company is which is going to propose a project is they are ISO certified 14001, then they have to protect or they have to manage the environment as well, and they have to comply with the local environmental laws. So that's why it is related. Otherwise, as such, no relation between ISO and the EIA.
Is there any software used for during EIA study?
Yes, there can be a different kind of a software that can be used to assess the environmental impact assessment. For example, to determine the environmental impacts of the on the air due to the air emission. Normally, we use air dispersion modeling software. Air dispersion modeling software that determine the dispersion of the pollutant uh, in the environment. So that can be used, and there is another software that can be used for the noise modeling. There are some other kind of a software which we use for discharges to the marine and the land with respect to the liquid discharges. So there are the different software that can be used to assess the environmental impact. But particularly for EIA as a whole, we cannot. There is no software, but to just identify and signify the environmental impact, there are the different software that are available with respect to the air, noise, discharges to the marine and the land that we can use.
In EIA, if EIA is not done to a project that can affect the environment, what is the penalty and what can government engineering profession do to avoid this scenario?
It varies from region to region. It depends on the laws. There might be some penalties from the government agencies who is regulating the environment. So it depends, and they can hold your project. They can give you the penalty, or some. It basically depends on the region to region, and it depends on the laws of the regulatory authority.
What are the measuring tools through which we can identify that that EIA is not required in any project?
Basically, it's not any tool which we can use. As we mentioned at the start of the our presentation in the briefing, we mentioned that it's basically depends. We have to just carry out the screening study on the basis of a group discussion, on the basis of the project documents, on the basis of the experience, that either it's EIA is required or not. And in some countries there is a rule to submit environmental permit application to the regulatory authority, and the regulatory authority will determine on the basis of the provided information that EIA is required or not. For example, if I talk about UAE, there is a rule that before commencing EIA, we have to submit one application to the regulatory authority, and then regulatory authority will determine on the basis of the information and on the basis of the project nature and on the basis of the location as well, either EIA is required or not. So on that basis, regulatory authority can also determine that whether EIA is required or not.
We'll take one more question and then we'll continue.
Okay, sure.
Uh, which is more important in project, planned or accidental impact assessment based on the risk profiling of the project?
Basically, both are important. We cannot avoid, we cannot miss uh, any one of them. We have to cover both planned and accidental, because accidental is also having a negative impact on the environment based on the discharges, and the planned one as well. So we cannot avoid, we cannot miss any of them, because both can have a negative impact on the environment. So thank you so much for your question. I hope we have answered all the questions. If you still have any question, you can raise your question in the QA session so that we can answer all those questions. So basically, these are the components, or this is basically the structure normally EIA should have, so that we can cover all the parts or aspects of the environment as well. You can see we mentioned here the structure of the EIA, but it is not limited as well, and it varies from country to country. But most of the countries are following the same or a similar kind of the EIA structure. So basically, the first section, that is a executive summary. In executive summary, we have to mention some process description and the summary of the findings on the basis of the what we have included in the EIA report in the remaining sessions, and what are our findings we have to mention in our executive summary. Then the introduction. In introduction section, we have to mention project title, project proponent details, the consultant who is carrying out the environmental impact assessment, and the project description and the rationale, what is the importance and what is the need of this project we have to mention. And then the justification and the chronology for the development of the EIA. Basically, the justification and the chronology is basically the law that is available in each country, in each region, we have to mention. Then the next section, what are the legal framework and the standards that are applicable and that are available in that region for that particular project. So we have to mention all the legal framework and the standards. Sometimes we have to only mention the international and the national, but some companies having their own standards as well. So we have to mention their company or the client standards as well in the legal frame and the standard section. Then the next section is the project description. In project description, we have to mention the statement of the need, why we need this project. Then we have to mention project location and their scale. Then we have to mention project and activity description, and then the project status and the schedule. That either the project is in a design stage, either it's in a feed stage, either it's in detail engineering stage, and what are the schedule of the project, when they are going to start the construction, when they are going to start the commissioning. So how all this schedule we have to mention. Then the next section, that is the environment impacts, mitigation and monitoring. This is a very important section because in this section we have to mention all the detail with respect to the baseline, with respect to the significance of the environment, and then the mitigation measures, and accordingly the monitoring program as well. So the first section, that is a description of the environment. This description of the environment means baseline conditions. What are the baseline conditions with respect to the air, with respect to the noise, with respect to the soil, groundwater, socio-economic conditions, and other environmental components? We have to mention the current condition of the environment around the project. Then environmental impact prediction and evaluation, and on the basis of the project activities and on the basis of the description of the environment, then we have to just predict what are the proposed or what are the impact that can be arise due to the project activity, and what are their significance, either it's a low, either it's a medium or high. And then on prediction and evaluation, then we have to just mention prediction mitigation measures. Mitigation measures, it can be the potential mitigation measures, selected mitigation measures, and we have to mention mitigation measures to address cumulative impact. And after all these mitigation measures, we have to mention residual impacts. Even after implementation of the mitigation measure, what will be the residual impact? And then after that, we have to mention monitoring program for the compliance with selected mitigation measures, cumulative impact monitoring program for cumulative impacts, monitoring program for residual impacts. And here I want to identify one thing, that in this section we have to cover air quality and GHG emission, we have to cover marine water, we have to cover waste management, we have to cover geology, seismicity, soil and the groundwater, then we have to cover marine ecology, we have to cover terrestrial ecology, we have to cover noise, traffic, socio-economic, social, cultural and ecological impacts on climate change, mitigation and adaptation measures. And if there is any other particular other environmental component, then we have to mention that as well. So here I want to just explain this session again. For example, if we are going to just explain and mention air quality and GHG emission, then in this section we have to mention description of the environment. Then in under the air quality and GHG emission, we have to mention environmental impact prediction and evaluation. Under the air quality and GHG emission, we have to mention mitigation measures. It will be the potential, it will be the selected, it will be the mitigation measures to address the cumulative impact. Then after implementation of the mitigation measures, then what will be the impacts? And then we have to mention monitoring program of each component, either it's air quality, GHG emission, marine water, waste management, geology, seismicity, soil, groundwater, marine. All these components should address all this section, which include description of the environment, impact prediction, evaluation, mitigation measures, and monitoring program. And then next section is the risk assessment. This basically the risk assessment. Here we have to mention all the accidental environmental impacts, whatever the accidental impact that can be possible due to the project activity, due to the project proposed project, we have to mention all the accidental environmental impacts in this section. Then the next section, that is the environmental management framework. In this one, we have to determine the roles and responsibilities. We have to mention the accountabilities, who will be answerable and what will be their roles and responsibilities. We have to mention. Then we have to determine the requirement for the training and the competency. Then we have to make the rule for communication. We have to mention monitoring and reporting, that who will reporting to whom. So we have to mention all this thing. Then we have to carry out the audit and inspection. And the next section is the chapter 6, that is the project alternative. We have to consider project alternatives as well, on the basis of the technology, on the basis of the site, so that we can propose as well that if we can use better technology, if we can use a better site location. So we have to mention project alternatives as well. And in the next and the last chapter and or the section, that should be in the EIA, that is a statement of the commitment, that the project proponent have to mention their commitment to comply with the mitigation measures and the recommendation that is mentioned in the EIA report, and they have to mention their commitments to comply with the environmental laws, framework, and the standards. So this is the basically the normal or typical structure of the EIA report. Normally, it is the main EIA structure, but there might be a minor changes in each region as well, but overall these are the main structure of environmental impact assessment report. So as I mentioned, that project alternatives, we have to mention an analysis of the available alternatives is necessary to establish that the most suitable management and the site option. This evaluation explains the selection of appropriate option that was required to ensure optimal result. This can be the no development option. Either if we will not propose such product, then what will be the scenario? And if we propose some alternative site, and if we propose some alternative technology, then we have to propose project alternatives as well. Environmental management framework, in the EMF will provide practical solution to minimize significantly adverse environmental impact, and will set out a system for a facility or the project proponent to follow, such that the environment detailed in the EIA are met. And here we will mention the objective of the environmental framework. It basically, the objective of the EMF will be to promote legislative compliance, promote the principle of best environmental practices in all general and emergency working procedures, then ensure that the environment impacts identified during this EIA are properly managed. Basically, here we have to just allocate the roles and responsibilities. We have to mention competency and the training requirement. Then we have to mention the communication protocol, that how we have to follow the communication protocol. Either communication, it can be the internal, it can be the external. So all this thing we have to mention. And then how we have to monitor the mitigation measures as well through audit and inspection. Define how environmental control measures will be effectively implemented, define roles and responsibility for ensuring environmental protection, monitor the effectiveness of the mitigation implemented, define environmental monitoring requirement, maintain high level of environmental awareness among the project team. As I mentioned, that it also determine the training and the competency. So it also basically maintain the high level of environmental awareness among the project team through the competency and the training. Provide a response procedure for environmental incident. It basically come under the communication, as I told you, that it can be internal and it can be external. And then identify any training needs and management requirement in order to determine required activities. Now this is what we have explained before as well, that what are the components of the environmental impact assessment and what are the main structure of environmental EIA report. Now we are going to start a case study, that is the environmental impact assessment for sulfur recovery unit. But before that, we can have again look at the question so that we can answer.
What is the significance of remote sensing or GIS in EIA studies?
Basically, GIS is one of the main tool in predicting the environmental impact because it will just give us that exact picture of the dispersion of the environmental impact. So these are one of the main component of the G on the EIA as well.
Can accidents happen even in planned projects under EIA?
Basically, planned projects all are the planned projects. We talked about the planned environmental impact and unplanned environmental impact. Basically, in the planned environmental impact, there is the chances that it can change into the unplanned as well. For example, the leakages, the pipeline is basically the planned. Their impact will be the planned, but if there will be the leakage, then it will turn into the unplanned. So it can be.
Is there any relationship between EIA and EMP? Where where we get EMP during project execution and the whole lifetime?
Yes, basically the last section that we mentioned, that is the EMF. It is basically a part of the EMP as well, and it is also the part of the EIA. And EMP basically it is varies. Sometimes it varies from country to country. If I talk about UAE, there are the different kinds of the EMP. For example, CEMP, we call it CEMP, Construction Environmental Management Plan, which required before construction of the project. And then there is a OEMP, Operational Environmental Management Plan, which required before operation of the facility of the project. And then there is another EMP, that is a DEMP, that is we call decommissioning environmental management plan, that is required before decommissioning of the project.
Is EIA applicable to mining and quarry industry?
Yes, definitely. It will be required for mining and the quarry, but again, it depends on the country as well. Because in some countries, EIA is required, and in some countries, there is also a name of the study that we call it initial environmental examination. So every company, they have set their rules that which kind of a project require which kind of a study. For example, if they mention that mining and the quarry they require EIA, then definitely. But in some country, they might mention that the mining and the quarry study only require initial environmental examination. Might some country they only require some management plans. So it varies from country to country as well.
Do we need to continue to review and update EIA? If yes, what is the frequency?
Yes, definitely. We need to update the EIA as well. In our initial slides, we mentioned that every 5 years, on the basis of the HSC integrity audit, we have to update environmental impact assessment as well. Either it's an existing facility, on the basis of the HSC audit, we have to carry out or update environmental impact assessment after every 5 years minimum.
Is it possible to carry out EIA without going through IE stage?
Yes, basically, as I mentioned just now before, that basically in some countries we call it IEE, initial environmental examination. In some countries, it's EIA. In some countries, it's basically only the management plan that they require. So it depends on the project. If the regulatory authority determines that this kind of a project only require IEE, which is initial environmental examination, then initial environmental examination will only be carried out, then no need for detailed environmental impact assessment. But if the regulatory authority determines that this kind of a project requires detailed environmental impact assessment instead of initial environmental examination, then the project proponent or the consultant has to carry out the detailed environmental impact assessment.
EIA accounts risk assessment also, or the RBI is not in the scope of EIA.
Basically, as we mentioned in the beginning, that we have to cover only the risk assessment for the unplanned environmental impact assessment. RBI is another terminology, that another study, but for environmental impact assessment with respect to the risk related, there is another methodology to determine the accidental environmental impacts.
Is noise pollution during the development of a project a part of EIA?
Yes, definitely. As I mentioned, that we have to determine or we have to establish the baseline condition, which include ambient air quality, which include noise, which include marine, which include terrestrial ecology, which include traffic, socioeconomics, social archaeology. So we have to cover all the components, which also include noise as well.
Is the EIA required for any agricultural forest lands and developments?
Yes, again, I will say that it depends on the country requirement. As I mentioned, that every company they already has set their rules and regulation. They made their schedule that what kind of a project is required, what kind of an environmental study. For normally for forest project or for this one, every country they have developed. For example, even the scale of the project is also determined by normally the regulatory authority. For example, if the power plant is producing power less than 50 megawatt, maybe they require IEE. But if they are generating more than, maybe they will require EIA report. So the scale and the type of the project is normally determined by each regulatory authority in each country.
How will you quantify the impacts per sector, or how will we know that the impact is low, medium, or high?
Basically, as we mentioned, that there are the different risk matrices. There are no hard and fast rule to determine the significance of environmental impact. There are the different risk matrices that we can use. We have showed you two matrices. One is for planned environmental impact, and the second one is for accidental environmental impact. So basically, that matrix can be used, or international practices. There are the different matrices that can be used. There is no hard and fast rule to determine the significance. It can be through risk matrices, and it is available as well.
What are the role of public participants in EIA, and what if the people not allow the project in the area because of adverse impacts of the environment?
Basically, the public participation, we have to involve the social part as well, and we have to listen their grievances, and we have to consider, or we have to listen their thinking and their approach with respect to the project. And so that we have to involve the public during the development of the EIA, so that we can mention in the EIA that what they are thinking about the project and what they are expecting from the project. Either that, on that basis we can determine that this project is a social, with respect to the social, it is a positive, and it is a negative on the basis of the public participation.
Are mitigation measures adopted 100% foolproof for controlling identified issues on the project in all EIA?
That we have to monitor that what are the effectiveness of the mitigation measures. That's why we are proposing monitoring programs as well, and then accordingly we have to determine the residual impacts as well, and we have to determine the audit and inspection. On that basis we can determine the effectiveness of the mitigation measures, and if we feel that the mitigation measures are not enough to control the environmental impact, and if there is any changes in the project facility, project description, anything is there is any changes, then we have to update environmental impact assessment as well.
What is the difference between EIA, CEMP, and DEMP?
Basically, it is to control the environmental impact in each life cycle of the project. If I talk about UAE here, normally environmental impact assessment is required at the early stage, as we mentioned in the beginning of our presentation, that EIA is required at the earliest possible stage, and then the subsequent stages will require some management plans as well. CEMP is the construction environmental management plan that requires before construction of the project. Operational environmental management plan OEMP is required before operation of the facility, and the DEMP decommissioning environmental management plan is required before decommissioning of the facility if there is any. Otherwise, DEMP is not required, because if the project is not having any decommissioning or demolition activity, then DEMP is not required. But if the project is having decommissioning or demolition, then DEMP will be required before demolition of the project.
We'll take one more question and then we'll answer the rest towards the end of the webinar.
Sure.
Is there any international standard for spill kit? If so, can you please specify?
Basically, spill kit comes under the safety part as well. There are the different spill kits, and it depends on the spillages as well. And there are the levels of the spillages. On that basis, spill kit can be used. So thank you so much, all of you, for your questions. I hope that we have answered all of the questions and it's satisfactory. Now we are going to start a case study that we have carried out environmental impact assessment for sulfur recovery unit. The facility is to convert. Now here we will give you some project description, that what is a sulfur recovery unit. The facility is to convert hydrogen sulfide from the acid gas feed streams to elemental sulfur and oxidize the remaining sulfur compounds to sulfur dioxide and less than 5 ppm H2S prior to the discharge to the atmosphere. Then ammonia destruction is to achieve less than 30 ppmv of NH3 in the gas stream exiting the condenser. The facility will be operating with a higher recovery of sulfur, 99.9 percentage, complying with the stringent atmospheric SO2 emission limit as well. So these are the basically the project overview. This is the project location. It is basically in UAE. This is the project location. What we have carried out in this project, basically we have carried out the kickoff meeting, then we have collected some data which include the drawings and the project related process description, some management plans that they have, some HSE plans. So all the data we have collected. Then we have carried out Enid workshop. Enid workshop, we already explained that it is basically a team assemble workshop where we have assembled all the discipline related engineers. It can be the HSE engineers, environment engineers, the design engineers, all kind of engineers or the discipline can be available, and they can discuss and they can mention what are the activities that can have the environment, what are their aspects, the impact, the mitigation measures, the monitoring programs, and on the basis of the discussion, the team discussion, we can mention that what are the risks associated with the environmental impact. And then we have carried out scoping study. In scoping study, we have mentioned that what we have to include in the detailed EIA report. In the scoping study, we have mentioned before as well that in scoping study, we have to mention what we have to include in the EIA report and what we have to scope out from the EIA report. And then after the scoping study, then we have carried out the detailed environmental impact assessment. In the detailed environmental impact assessment, we already mentioned the components as well, that introduction, the legal framework, then environmental impact and the mitigation measures, and then the project alternatives and the statement of the fitness or the statement of the commitments. In this project, we delivered environmental baseline survey report. We carried out a dispersion modeling report. There was one question before that we answered, that is there any software that we can use, and we answered that to identify or to assess the air quality impact, we can use air dispersion modeling software, so that we can prepare a dispersion modeling report as well. So in this project, we have used air dispersion modeling software, AirMod. We will explain in our later slide as well. So we have carried out air dispersion modeling report. Then we have carried out noise assessment report. It was also through the modeling software. Then we have developed pollution prevention control report. Yes, pollution prevention report. It is basically a client standard that we have to follow, and we have to prepare a one report, that is the pollution prevention control report. In this report, basically we have to comply, we have to mention the compliance of the project with respect to the pollution prevention technologies. We call it as the best available technology. So in this project we have prepared pollution prevention control report, where we determine what are the technologies that the project proponent used, and they are compliant with the BAT assessment, best available technologies. Then we have developed the construction management plan as well. So now we will go for basically the environment impacts and mitigation measures as well. So the first one, that is the air quality. Air quality can cause significant effect on the environment and subsequently on humans, animal, vegetation, and the material. It primarily affects the respiratory by fine dust, circulatory by carbon monoxide, and olfactory system in the humans. Basically, in the air quality, we have to gather the information and the data with respect to the climate as well. That what are the climate around the project? Either it's a hot climate, either it's a cold, semi-hot. So all this information we have to collect. What are the rain fall data? What are the wind velocity, speed, direction? We have to collect all this information under the air quality. Humidity, we have to check the humidity as well, the temperature, rainfall, wind. In this project, basically the relative humidity is high throughout the year, which averaging about 70 and reaching 95 as well. The temperature maximum temperature vary from 12.4 in March to a peak that is the 44.6 in July and August, which is a peak summer time. Then the average rainfall is 88 mm, which occurs as a series of discrete events throughout November to April. Then the prevailing wind direction is from northwest, although this may be modified by the effect of the sea breeze as well. Then this is basically the wind rose on the basis of the wind speed and the direction. Yes, this is the baseline data. That is the ambient air quality monitoring. We have carried out some of the information that we got from client as well. They have provided us ambient air quality data, and some of the information or the data we have collected. In the ambient air quality, we have monitored oxides of sulfur, oxides of nitrogen, particulate matter 10. Particulate matter 10, there are the different kinds of the particulate matter. It can be a particulate matter 10, it can be a TSP, total suspended particulate matter, and there are the different sizes of the particulate matter as well. But normally, the standard in UAE, that is a particulate matter 10 and TSP. So we have monitored or the data information provided by the company or the client, that is a PM10, then ozone, carbon monoxide, and H2S. Basically, this information or this data is provided for the month of January, February as well, and even March as well. But here we mention January and Feb. Uh, you can see the table as well that we have mentioned that minimum hourly data for oxides of sulfur, oxides of nitrogen, particulate matter 10, ozone, CO, and H2S is in the same way. The maximum hourly data then exceed hourly, minimum 8 hours, maximum 8 hours, exceed 8 hours, minimum daily, maximum daily, then exceed daily, then monthly average as well, and the actual capture percentage as well. That what is the percentage of the capturing the data. So each month we have collected the data for all these criteria pollutants, and we can see that what are the monthly average percentage of these pollutants, what are the daily exceedance, what are the maximum daily, what are the minimum daily concentration of these pollutants, and then what are the maximum 8 hourly concentration of these pollutants, what are the minimum 8 hourly of these pollutants, then what are the maximum hourly concentration of these pollutants, and what are the minimum hourly concentration of this pollutant in the month of January and in the month of February. Then, as I told before as well, that we have carried out air dispersion modeling as well, and we have used air dispersion modeling software, that is a air mod, that is a approved US EPA model software for the estimation of the maximum ground level concentration of the pollutant discharged from the stacks, and air dispersion modeling is undertaken. Basically, in this modeling software, there are the numerous input data that is required to just run the software so that we can get the modeling results. Modeling input data operation, stack height that was provided by the client, then the stack diameter that was also provided, then stack velocity that we have calculated, the stack temperature provided by the company. Then we have used metrological files. We call it as a CFC and PFL files. Then some emission rates were provided by the company. The area, the velocity, the stack discharge rate, and then the emission rate as well. For example, what is the concentration of the sulfur dioxide? 150 milligram per normal meter cube. Then nitrogen oxide, then carbon monoxide, and sulfur hydrogen sulfide as well. So these are the emission rates. Then you can see there are the modeling results. You can see that we have modeled the software for oxides of nitrogen, oxides of sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen sulfide. And you can see that the averaging period that we model the software for 1 hour, 24 hour for oxides of nitrogen, and then sulfur dioxide we model for 1 hour, 24 hour annual. For carbon monoxide we model the software for 1 hour and 8 hour, and then for H2S we model for 1 hour and 24 hour. We model this software for this averaging period based on the standard, basically, because NO2 is having a standard in UAE for 1 hour and 24 hours. So we have to check either for 1 hour is there any accidents of this concentration, is there any accidents of nitrogen oxide for 24 hour, then same way for sulfur dioxide for 1 hour, 24 hour, then annual, then carbon monoxide for 1 hour, 8 hour, because the standard is for 1 hour and 8 hours. That's why we model this software for 1 hour and 8 hour, and in the same way H2S as well. And in the left, and you can see that the model maximum concentration for nitrogen, for oxides of nitrogen for 1 hour we got 1.32 microgram per meter cube. For 24 hour 0.37. Sulfur dioxide for 1 hour we got 3.64. For 24 hours 1.01. For annual 0.24. In the same way, for carbon monoxide for 1 hour 0.012 milligram per meter cube, and for 8 hours 0.0068 milligram per meter cube, and hydrogen sulfide for 1 hour 0.11 microgram per meter cube, and for 24 hour 0.03 microgram per meter cube. And your right hand side you can see the contour of the dispersion of the pollutant as well. There are the different color codings, color dispersion, where you can see that how they are dispersing in the environment. Here you can also see these are the basically the modeling contours for one of our basically the pollutants. We can identify the point emission, and accordingly on the basis of the emission rates and their stack parameters, these pollutants is dispersing in the environment. Then we have carried out a cumulative impact assessment for air quality. Basically, you can see basically the table the averaging period, then the company ambient air quality standards, and then the model value, and then the baseline condition and the cumulative value. For example, oxides of nitrogen, the averaging period that we consider that is 24 hours, and the company ambient air quality standard that is 150, and the model concentration that we receive for 24 hour of oxides of nitrogen that is a 0.37, and the baseline value that we monitored, baseline environmental ambient air quality, that the data that we have shown to you for the month of January and for the month of February. So this value is taken from that particular table, and after combining baseline value and the model value, we came to know we got cumulative value that is a 7.27, and you can see that the ambient air quality standard for oxides of nitrogen that is a 150, and then the cumulative value including the baseline value and the model value that is coming 7.27, which shows that oxides of nitrogen will not exceed ambient air quality standard. And in the same way, oxides of sulfur dioxide, we model for 24 hour for the cumulative impact assessment. The ambient air quality standard for oxides of sulfur, it is also the 150 milligram microgram per meter cube, and then the model value that we got after the AIDS per year modeling, that is a 1.01, and then the baseline value we got it again from the same table, the data that we have shown to you for the month of January and February, we got the value 10.6, and after combining the value is coming as a cumulative that is 11.61. So it also shows that the oxides of sulfur will also not exceed the ambient air quality, and it is also comply with the ambient air quality standard. And in the same way, for the carbon monoxide as well, it is also showing that the value of the carbon monoxide after cumulative adding of the baseline value and the model value, it is also complying with uh, applicable standard of ambient air quality as well. And in the same way, H2S, there is no particular standard in UAE for ambient air quality for H2S. That's why we did not mention here. But the model value that is a 0.11, and the baseline value that is a 13.2. So the cumulative value that we got that is the 13.31. Then we just predict some environmental impact and evaluate during construction. As we mentioned that we have to consider the life cycle of the project. So during construction, we identify atmospheric emission likely to occur during construction phase, incremental particular concentration due to the proposed construction activities, then the fugitive emissions are likely to occur throughout the construction phase. Then during the operation phase, it is likely that atmospheric emission and air quality impacts may occur during the operation phase of the proposed project. The flue gases will be emitted from the heaters, boilers, and the flare. Fugitive emission will also be emitted from the flanges, valves, and pumps. And during operation of the facility, there is a possibility of H2S, oxides of sulfur, nitrogen, carbon monoxide emission from the incinerator stacks. Then after impact prediction and evaluation, then we carried out cumulative impact assessment. PM10 and vehicular emission may increase if any industry do establish in the vicinity of the project. Therefore, the cumulative impact are expected to be less. Then after this, we propose some mitigation measures during construction and operation to control or to mitigate the environmental impact. As we mentioned that there is a potential and the selected mitigation measures. For the potential mitigation measures, we mentioned that unleaded petrol and ultra low sulfur fuel shall be used. Equipment or vehicle emissions shall be kept to a minimum by eliminating engine idling time, conducting regular maintenance, provision of VOC filters, monitoring to be carried out as per the monitoring program, and undertake LDR program, lead detection program, and handling of processed chemicals as per the standard practice. Then we have proposed some selected mitigation measures as well. Stack height should be higher than the roof height of nearby structures to aid in dispersion of the gaseous pollutant. There are the particular standard in each country, or there are particular standard for the company or the client as well. So the stack height should be higher than the roof height. Ensure effective maintenance and the operational procedures so as to reduce the potential for unnecessary plant operation interruption or upsets. It is important to understand that these emissions control can only be effective if maintained and serviced regularly. Provide speed limit suitable for the type of the road that will be present to avoid accident and subsequent traffic delays. And then we propose some mitigation measures to address cumulative impacts. Cumulative impacts can only occur if new industry are established immediately next to project. As of now, there are no cumulative construction or operational activities anticipated to arise in the project area adjacent. Then we mention monitoring programs. The following monitoring measures shall be used. Predictive emission monitoring system should be installed. Continuous emission monitoring system must be in place. Data tests for SEMs and pumps shall be carried out by EPC contractor. Routine checks of flanges, valves, pumps, seals, and compressor seals. S2S detection system should be in place. Periodic air quality monitoring shall be implemented. So these are the monitoring program that we propose for this project. Then the marine ecology. For this particular project, basically on the basis of the workshop, on the basis of the project documents and the location, it is anticipated that the project location is located away from the marine environment, so there is no impact on the marine ecology. That's why we have scoped out the marine ecology from the EIA. Then the waste management. Then we have identify what are the maximum, what are the kind of the waste that can be generated through the project. Solid waste that can be a spent catalyst. Hazardous waste, if any, will be sent for landfill. Poor storage of such waste may result in leaking of liquid to the soil, causing contamination of both soil and groundwater. And then this is the waste solid effluent summary that can be generated through the project activity. For example, spent catalyst, it can be a catalyst for claws, catalyst for degassing, catalyst for tail gas hydrogenation, and we have mentioned their quantity, their discharges quantity, and their disposal as well. And then there are some of kind of a solid waste that is a spent filter element, spent filter element of TGCU, quench water filter, and there are so many other spent filter elements as well. So we have mentioned their quantity and their disposal. Then wastewater effluent summary, we have mentioned that there are some kind of a wastewater that can be generated. For example, sour water from acid gas knockout drum, then sour water from solid waste sewerage gas knockout drum, XX TGCU quench water, TGCU reflux blade water. So these are all the pollution sources and the wastewater effluent that can be generated, and accordingly we have mentioned their quantities and their destination or the disposal as well. Then we have determined their impact prediction, and we have determined the significance as well during construction and operation. The liquid effluent likely to be generated during the construction and operational activities, namely sewage, hazardous liquid and hazardous water, sanitary sewage produced from the workforce and laboratory facilities. Hazardous effluent include paint, thinners from construction activities and spillages during filling and maintenance activities. And then the use of the groundwater resources, water will be required for construction and operation, and can impact the level of the groundwater. And then the management of the campsite waste as well, the spills and the leakages. Then the vehicle accident, it can also generate the waste, and it can also impact the soil and the groundwater. Then the fire and the explosion. Then on that basis we have determined the cumulative impact as well. Expected key cumulative impact include the following: cumulative alteration to the groundwater regime, cumulative minor contamination of the groundwater, stormwater runoff impacts, reducing the area available for groundwater recharge by replacing unpaved area with paved area, improper sanitation arrangements and waste management, and temporary or the permanent change in the soil quality. Then we have proposed some mitigation measures during consumption and operation. Adequate storage of the hazardous water should be provided. The volume of the water for disposal should be reduced. If chemical use is necessary, then a careful selection of the chemical additives. Then the liquid effluent will be handled and disposed according project HSC plan. Then a storage tank will be fitted with overfill protection devices. The facility shall operate a chemical spill response plan, and the operators shall have at least their disposal and appropriate level of spill response equipment. Then all hard standing and burns will be inspected, perform a suitable training programs, ensure all equipment is in good mechanical condition, proper container labeling. All process area floors shall be fully paved so that the soil and the groundwater contamination can be avoided. Any spill and leaks shall be immediately cleaned to avoid spread of contamination to other areas. Then the next aspect, that is a geology. We have collected the information from the literature that is available in the form of the books, in the form of the previous project documents. So we have collected all this information. Regional geology, then the local geology with respect to the surrounding of the project. Then on that basis, we have predict the impact and the due to the construction and the operation, and we have concluded that there will be no impact anticipated on local geology due to the project activities. Therefore, it is not assessed in this EIA. Then hydrology and hydrogeological resources, which include the water reservoirs, groundwater reservoirs. This information we also collected from the literature that are available in the previous studies on previous books. So we have collected all this information. Then we have collected soil and groundwater. We have collected some samples of the groundwater and soil to determine the quality of the soil and the groundwater. You can see these are the location from where we have collected the soil samples and the groundwater samples, and these are the results of the soil that we have carried out the test. Here you can see that hydrocarbon TPH, gasoline, uh, diesel range, organics, heavy fractions. We have analyzed the heavy metals, which include the antimony, arsenic, copper, cadmium, lead, iron, nickel, cobalt, chromium, barium, zinc, mercury, boron, selenium. So all these we have tested, and we have compared these results with Dutch intervention and US EPA standards as well. And these are all we have analyzed the BITEX as well, which include benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, xylene, MNP xylene, and O-xylene as well. And then we have carried out groundwater analysis as well. The parameters, you can see that electrical conductivity, temperature, TSS, TDS, BOD, COD, all and grease, arsenic, barium, cobalt, copper, iron, lead, selenium, silver, zinc, and nickel, boron, total chromium, mercury, cadmium, antimony, molybdenum, diesel range, organics, heavy fraction, benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, and xylene as well. And based on the soil and the groundwater results and further comparison with respective Dutch intervention and the United US EPA, all the parameters with respect to the groundwater, all the parameters including lead were detected in all samples, but were within the DIV, Dutch intervention values, and US EPA. The pH values of all samples were within the normal level for groundwater, except there is a three locations where the pH values were high, which is monitoring well number 7, 9, and 10. And with respect to the soil, antimony, arsenic, cadmium, lead, molybdenum, and BITEX was not detected in any sample. Copper was detected in some sample, collected sample from BH1, borehole 1, borehole 2, and these are exceeded from the US EPA as well. In the same way, the manganese was detected in some samples. Iron was detected in all borehole has samples. Nickel was detected in samples collected from borehole 1 and 2. Cobalt was detected. Chromium was detected. Barium was detected. Zinc was detected. And the TPH was detected in samples collected from borehole 3 and 16 and monitoring well 8 as well. Then we have considered the terrestrial ecology as well. The analysis did not identify any species. Basically, we have again collected the information from the previous conducted studies, the available literature, government websites, on the internet. So we have collected the information through these resources, and we have surveyed the site as well with respect to the terrestrial survey. The analysis did not identify any species of ecological interest that will be affected by the proposed project. The project site is dominated by coastal subka that is of a limited importance for wildlife but does offer some refuge and foraging site for wildlife. Other fauna along the seafront and in and around jetty and associated infrastructure include the green and horsebill turtles. In addition, a number of species of water bird are considered likely to be present in the area in regionally important numbers. Then on the basis of the annual workshop and review of the document and the project location, there will be no impact anticipated on the terrestrial ecology. Why there is no impact? Because it is already in the existing facility. So there it is. That's why we are scoping out from the EIA. Then the noise, the next component, that is a noise. For description or for the establishment of the baseline, we noise monitoring data is gathered through the company provided information and the survey as well. We have used the noise meter to monitor the noise level around the project location. You can see the graph as well. During the daytime, the noise level during the daytime has been observed to be within the permissible limits. However, but there are some locations which having a high noise level as well. In the same way, the night time, the noise during the night time has also been observed to be within the permissible limit, mostly, except there are the few locations where the noise level are high at night time as well. In some countries, there are the two standards basically with respect to the night. One is the daytime noise and the nighttime as well. So we have to monitor for both. Then we have determined the significance and we have evaluated the impact as well. The following are the main activities or the sources of the noise emission: site work, operation of the construction equipment, movement of construction vehicle transporting material, welding, cutting, painting, routine plant operation, operation of control valves and depressing valves, and operation of emergency vents as well. Then cumulative impact, there are no future developments planned within the surrounding, so cumulative impact is only have just because of these 2 points: noise and vibration as a result of the construction activities, noise as a result of the increased vehicle traffic on a local road. And we did not mention any additional mitigation measure for cumulative impact. But however, for other noise, we mentioned for construction and operation, which include all vehicle, plant and machinery to be fitted with effective exhaust. All vehicle, plant and machinery should be maintained. Diesel generator should be provided with noise enclosures. All machinery, any machinery which is intermittent in use should be shut off in period of no use. Then mitigation measure, appropriate PPs should be provided, periodic noise monitoring should be carried out, site layout to maximum natural screening, orientation of directional noise sources away from sensitive receptors, noise barrier and bundling, housing of noisy plant within building. And then we have proposed some monitoring program as well. Then the next is the traffic. The proposed project lies within the industrial area and hence the impact on the flow of the traffic is at minimum level. However, the traffic will increase significantly due to the heavy vehicle movement during the construction stage. Then we have proposed some mitigation measures. The existing road network is considered to be sufficient. Peak traffic time considered unavoidable will be immediately prior to work shift commencement. Deliveries, waste collection, and product collection should be scheduled between these two periods. And then we propose some monitoring program during the construction phase. The appointed contractor will be required to have all internal construction road sign posted for allowable road speeds. Visual checks will be undertaken by the contractor. If necessary, HSE team may impose restriction on those violating road rules, such as temporary or the permanent suspension of vehicle access permission for individual violators. Then we have considered socio-economic environment. The construction and the operation of the project will require the use of energy and the water, therefore contributing to the depletion of the resources. Impact on the land use. The land use in the immediate surrounding area of the facility is predominantly industrial, hence no impact anticipated on the land use during the construction and the operation of the project. And then the impact on the recreational and the fishing. There will be no impact on recreational and the fishing activities. And then after all these things, we have proposed some action plan as well that need to be implemented during the construction and the operation as well. Construction environmental action plan for ambient air quality, ambient H2S, PM10, oxides of sulfur, NOx, welding, painting, fabrication. It should be monitored on a basis of the weekly, and the responsibility is the EPC contractor. Noise level at several locations within the work set and the ambient using sound pressure level meter. It should be bi-weekly, and EPC will be the responsible. Hydrotides produced during the integrity testing of tanks and pipelines. Qualitative analysis before draining, pre-commissioning, and responsible is the EPC contractor. Liquid effluent and resource consumption. And these are all the operational environmental action plan that we determine so that it can be implemented during the operation phase. You can see the groundwater, land contamination, noise, air. Air can be undertake inspection on air emission control, air quality performance stands, and calculation of annual emission to all of air pollutants. Then the greenhouse gases, wastewater, stormwater, the waste. It can be a solid and hazardous waste. And then we have considered some project alternatives. Since no development option represent a situation where the project will not be implemented. In such case, both the positive and negative impacts of the project implementation do not occur. With respect to the relocation option, in this case, the project has been proven suitable as a per plant activity because raw material will come from the nearby refinery. Site alternative, no site alternative option has been selected as the existing refinery is in operational state and new plant will part of the same refinery process. Then we have concluded and give some recommendations as well. The air quality monitoring data provided by company reveals exceedance of particulate matter due to the wind blow at monitoring station. Air dispersion modeling results reveal the ground level concentration of the criteria pollutants are considered insignificant. No interaction with marine ecology and no impact on terrestrial ecology as well. The groundwater results are provided by the company and all the parameters are in compliance. Results of soil are taken from previous studies shows presence of some heavy metals in the soil. Noise level values are in compliance with applicable standard except noise level values at some of the locations. And then we have given some recommendations as well on the basis of the Enid workshop that was carried out before the scoping study. Noise assessment study shall be conducted on basis of number and type of the equipment machine. It is a responsibility of the HSE consultant, mean environmental consultant. Then the air quality monitoring shall be conducted during construction and operation as per the frequency mentioned in EAP. It is the responsibility of the EAP, EPC and the company, EPC during the construction and the company during the operation. Identification of the inventory list of fugitive emission sources for new SIU facility and update the same in existing RRE LDR procedure. This is the responsibility of the EPC contractor. LDR program shall be implemented as per the NOx standard. It is basically the company standard that we mentioned here. Leak detection and the repair program shall be provided to identify the leakages from the molten sulfur pit and the tanks, and it is a responsibility of the EPC contractor. So this is all about the case study that we presented to you and the project that we have carried out for environmental impact assessment. And thank you all of you for your participation. So there will be now the question answer session so that we can answer your questions. Yes, Mr. Jafar.
Yeah. So can EI also is EI also required for partially demolition of project?
As I mentioned before as well, that if there is any demolition activity that is a part of the scope of work, then EIA or management plan will be required.
In the event of exceedance like PM10, what will be the course of action to mitigate this emission?
Well, basically, it depends. It depends on the nature that why it is exceedance. On that basis, we can propose some mitigation measures. For example, if it is during the construction stage, and if we feel that it is due to the vehicular movement, then we can propose that the roads should be paved, and we can also propose that the water sprinkling should be used so that the dust can be settled and it cannot be dispersed, so that the particulate matter emission cannot be exceeded.
Which software is used for air dispersion modeling?
As we mentioned that we have used air dispersion modeling air mode, breeze air mode software we have used, that is approved US EPA software for air dispersion modeling.
Is there any environmental impact of liquid hydrocarbon mixture, that is propane and butane, contained in the flow lines drained into the open pit area near the onshore well sites? Please elaborate in detail if there is any environmental hazard that would be, and that what would be the mitigation measure?
Yes, definitely. That will be one of the main environmental impact that can impact the environment. See, there are the different, basically the flow lines. It will be the unplanned environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact. It will not be the planned one. And basically the flow lines, it should be, if they are drained into the open pit area near the onshore well sites, it depends basically, because it's not allowed in the country. If I talk about in the UAE, it's not about to discharge openly without testing this kind of a material, so it must be tested. And without testing, because what are their level of contamination, it will be difficult to propose, so it must before test.
For EIA report, is it necessary to consider HAPs? Not really sure what HAPs are.
Basically we have to consider as well, but again it depends on the country requirement as well.
Briefly explain what Enid workshop is.
Yes, as we explained before as well, that the Envid is a workshop. It is basically a team effort. It is a assembly of the team from the project proponent side, from the engineering consultant, from the environmental consultant, to discuss about the project activities and their possible impacts on the environment with respect to the air quality, with respect to the noise, with respect to the terrestrial, marine, socio-economic. So it's basically a team discussion or the team brainstorming workshop where we have to determine or identify the impacts. We have to determine their significance and accordingly some recommendations as well if required.
What are the air sampling methods you propose for emission inventories to be developed for CAPS?
There are basically normally we have to follow the US EPA methods to just determine the ambient air quality, or for the sampling the most preferred method is US EPA or the equivalent methods.
Since when is the EIA being used or implemented, and who has developed this requirement?
Basically, this is the requirement by the government in each country. There is a particular regulatory authority in each country that is responsible to just implement and to make these requirements to look into the project environmental impact on the environment. So every country having their own regulatory authorities, and they are the one establishing the EIA requirement with respect to their local conditions as well.
Is there any plan provided in the EIA study if serious environmental aspects are found during the study?
Yes, definitely. Basically, there is a mitigation measures that are proposed, and on the basis of the mitigation measures, we have to identify the nature of the residual impact as well, and there is a action plan as well that must be in the EIA so that it can be monitored the effectiveness of the mitigation measures, and if it is not, if still residual impact is high and it is in the high level, then we have to look into the other mitigation measures as well.
In regards to climate change, how often should EIA be carried out to measure the level of environmental damage?
Basically, with respect to the climate change, we have to just estimate the greenhouse gases. That what are the possible greenhouse gases that can be emitted from the that particular project, and then on that basis we can just mention the impact on the climate change as well, and accordingly we can propose some action plan and the mitigation measures. And if the project is not having emission of the GHG emission, so then there will be no impact on the climate change, so there will be no as such requirement of the action plan and the mitigation measures.
What are the determinants of an effective mitigating measure on a project?
Yes, basically we have to check the residual impact as well, that after the implementation of the mitigation measures, what are the residual impact. So if it is still high, then we have to look the other ways, or we have to propose some other mitigation measures so that the effectiveness can be checked, or the environmental impact can become under the reasonable or alarm level.
How is UAV drone useful in preparing EIA, especially in mapping?
Yes, definitely. The drone, UAV drone is one of the tool that can be used for the mapping. Basically, again, I will give you an example. And here in UAE, there are the different kinds of the drone which are being used to determine the mapping, to give the aerial photography as well, and that is a beneficial for establishing the current baseline condition, and to establish the impact prediction as well, their dispersion of the pollutants or their dispersion of the impact as well. So it is definitely a helpful, one of the helpful tool for this establishing the baseline condition and dispersion of the impact as well.
What are the procedures that we should follow while making a good environmental impact on workplace? Is it related to bush management?
Uh, Basically, Nibosh management is related to the workplace. They are. We can say that they are interlinked as well. Not Nibosh, but the workplace and the environment. Because if a project is having a adverse environmental impact, definitely they are affecting the workers who will work on the that project as well. So they are interconnected in this way. But Nibosh, that is related to the worker safety, that is another discipline. But environmental impact, if the negative or adverse, that they can also affect the workers who will work on that particular project.
In preparing the EIA report in construction project, is there any requirement the report must be prepared by a competent person or certified person, such as chartered engineer or professional engineer, etc.?
Yes, basically it is a requirement of almost every country that EIA must be carried out by approved consultant. Approved mean approved company, or the approved consultant mean approved with regulatory authority. For example, Velosi is approved a consultant with Environment Agency Abu Dhabi. If a project proponent required to carry out environmental impact assessment, so the approved consultant can only carry out environmental impact assessment, and not any other engineer. Even not an engineer can carry out environmental impact assessment in Abu Dhabi. Only the approved company who is approved with a regulatory authority, they can only conduct environmental studies, not a person, not an engineer.
For carbon footprint for commercial area, for carbon footprint for commercial areas or residential areas, is there any software available?
There are basically different tools that are available. We can check. You can check US EPA. There are the different. They have made their tools. They have made their worksheets through which we can determine this.
What are the common or ideal environmental risk management framework used for EIA?
Basically, as I mentioned before as well, that in this framework we have to determine the roles and responsibilities. We have to determine the procedure for the communication, and we have to determine the audit and the inspection, how and who will conduct the audit, and how audit will be conducted, and what are the frequency of the audit and inspection. So these are the minimum requirements that need to be met for the effective EMS.
So we'll answer a final question and we call it the webinar. Do we need to include engine exhaust discharge from diesel fire pumps or foam discharge from foam fighting systems in an EIA report done for an offshore or an onshore plant expansion?
Yes, definitely we should consider. Although it will be the minor one, the impact will be the minor one, since their operation will be the minor. They only use at the time of the emergency or the normal routine operation. Their impact will be minimum, but we have to identify all the activities and the aspects in the EIA report that can affect the environment. Although their impact will be insignificant, but we should mention.
So thank you, Mr. Faisal, for giving a wonderful presentation on EIA. So we hope we are able to gain some knowledge in the area of EIA today.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you, all the participants. I hope we have answered all the questions. And if there is any question, you can, there is a email address is provided. You can approach, and the certificates, participation certificates will also be issued for all those who joined this webinar. This certificate will be issued to them through their registered email address as well. Thank you so much, and please keep in touch with our LinkedIn page, Facebook page, and other media, so that you always up to date for our upcoming webinars. As Mr. Jafar mentioned in the beginning, that is, it is our 26th webinar, and there is always every week we are arranging a free webinar on the different topics, and there will be another webinar on the Saturday, and you can keep in touch with us through our LinkedIn page or other social media platforms, so that you get the knowledge about our upcoming webinar. So thank you, all of you. I hope we have answered all the questions, and this webinar is very useful for you. And still you have any questions, you can contact us through registered email address as well. Thank you, all of you, once again. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.